So we've just got back from our curry and there is a massive thunderstorm going on. And it's one of the things that I was kind of talking about earlier when I was saying I'm just a human being, I'm just an animal on a planet. Kind of, it feels like nature's way of just expressing how colossal it is. And that's quite nice. Just to realign my expectations of being alive and whatnot with my space in the world, and actually the universe is a huge existential place, and me getting caught up about the little things sometimes comparatively with what is happening all over the entire area that I live in is so fundamentally small. Yes, it can matter a lot to me, that's absolutely fine, but just that little reminder that the world is such an enormous place and something that I want to explore. Day 34. So today's been a bit of an odd day because I've felt all of the physiological things that kind of happen when I do drop, the kind of tightening of the chest and severe tiredness and fatigue and not having any energy to do anything. But that hasn't been accompanied by the kind of sadness and darkness that usually comes with it. So I imagine on the outside I would have looked like I was having a pretty bad day when actually it was just a fairly standard zero-y sort of day, but my body was going through the things that it goes through when it's usually a worse day. And that makes things like getting out of bed or doing anything or wanting to be around people or get out of the house very difficult. And even to the point where I'll be at the shop and being served by a cashier and don't even end up looking that person in the eye, which is the polar opposite to the way that I kind of usually am when I'm in a more positive place, when I'll engage with people very quickly and cheerfully. And historically that used to kind of drive me further down because I felt guilty for not treating people with respect, when actually ultimately I probably was just being normal. I think because I can understand the positivity that I bring to the world and to other people when I'm in a much better place, I'm kind of allowed to have a bad day every now and again, and that's something that I've never really come to terms with before. So when it has been a bad day, it's been horrendous and I've not really excused myself for having it. I very loosely remember a story that was told to my class when I was maybe in year 3 or 4 about social responsibility almost, I suppose. And it's set in a village that predates currency, and people are farmers or carpenters or whatever, and they make goods or they deliver services and they trade those services directly with each other, and it's quite difficult to sometimes get the things that you need because you can't necessarily trade with the people that you need to trade with. And one day a magician arrives in the village with this magic cabinet and says to everybody, if you put something of value into the cabinet, that item that you put in will disappear and you can ask for whatever you want in return for the item that you've put into the cabinet. And so the fishmonger, for instance, would come and put in 2 or 3 fish into the cabinet, close the door, and ask for a wooden chair, and the fish would be gone and the chair would have materialised in the cabinet. And so they all lead much better lives and lifestyles because they can get access to the things they want in return for something of similar value, which makes their day-to-day problem solving much easier. And time goes by and they get used to this way of living, and one of the characters eventually starts to put in hay into the cabinet and asks for gold, and the hay gets taken away, the gold turns up, and he takes the gold and starts to take advantage of the system and take out more than he puts in. And one day he goes in with his straw and puts it into the cabinet and closes the door and asks for gold, opens the door again, and there's still the straw there. And his misuse of that and the imbalance of fairness caused the cabinet to break, and he's then ultimately lost something really good for the entire community. And consciously or not, I think that story has kind of stayed with me throughout most of my life and has been a kind of defining element of the way that I look at my input into things and what I take away from things. And then when I combine that with the kind of mental crusher side of stuff, where my opinion of myself and what I do has always been very low, I've always felt that my input into everything around me has been insignificant and therefore felt guilty about taking any help or anything from anybody. And throughout the last 30 odd days I've started to realise that that's maybe not actually the case, and that there is some value in what I give to the world and what I do, which makes both accepting things in return much easier and means I don't necessarily beat myself up so much about it. Which I think is why today has been like a dull day but not a bad day, because historically I would have just trapped myself in a negative cycle and almost beat myself into sadness. But today that just hasn't been the case. So overall, rather standard day, difficult but not down, but back to work tomorrow and hopefully a return to what it's been like for the last week or so. So share, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.